Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr. Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast.
Chapter 18, Dream World, Part 4.
Dream world, I live in a dream world. But in my dream world, I want to stay. 'Cause in my dream world, whenever I'm lonely, I think of you only. And I hear you say, and I like it that way. 'Cause I am your dream girl, each night in my dream world. And though my dream nights turn into day, I have the memories, and I hope they'll never die. 'Cause when I close my eyes, I hear you say, and I like it that way. I used to sit and cry because you said goodbye. I didn't know what to do. But then suddenly the answer came to me. Dream of you, dream of you. Don't wake me up and let me stay with you in my dream world. 'Cause life in a dream world is warm and sweet, both night and day. Whoa, whoa, with your lips burning on my lips, the violins softly play, and I like it that way. No, I like it that way. Really like it that way. No, I like it that way. My baby, yeah, I like it. No, I like it that way.
During this time, I was also traveling back and forth to visit my daughter. I had made a promise to her that I'd come back to LA 1 week out of every month until she was 18. Part of this whole healing was being able to have the strength to do that as well. I would drag myself to the airport. It was a big deal for me because it was the first time that I'd ever traveled alone and checked into a hotel by myself. I felt like a teenager leaving home for the first time to go to school, only I was nearly 50 years old. I found a hotel, the Shangri-La in Santa Monica, right across the street from a park that overlooks the ocean. It was economical for me, with rooms that had a little kitchenette. Only 1 block up from the Shangri-La was another hotel called the Miramar. On one of my trips, I peered out of my window to see none other than President Bill Clinton jogging with his Secret Service entourage on Arizona Avenue. His charisma is so expansive that even though I was over 100 feet away from where he was, I felt his electrical charms. In the hotel room, I would always light candles and in my consciousness tried to keep the energy flowing and incorporate what I was doing in California as part of my process of healing. When it came time to say goodbye to Katie, it was horrifying for both of us because she didn't understand why I had to go, and it would break my heart to leave her. On the plane ride to and from LA, I would read or write in a journal or just have to cry. It was all very much like feeling completely naked to the world. I would kind of hide my face and just process life's experiences from both locations. I could have reached out to my mother on these trips to LA in the beginning, but I needed to rebuild my strength before I did this. We had been estranged before I had left for Hawaii. I decided to write her a letter. I don't have a copy of the letter, but I remember how it opened. I did a play on words, writing, "Ruth, the truth hurts." I had never addressed my mother by her first name. I always assumed that that would be an insult to her. But at this point, I couldn't contain my anger. I don't remember anything else I said to her except to say that now I knew about Maury not being my father. I'm sure I didn't want to incriminate Aunt Anne and get into the how or why I had found out the news, because theirs was already a strained relationship. But other than that, I didn't think about any consequences. I was just so angry and disappointed. Still in the beginning stages of trying to understand and comprehend the reason why my parents had chosen to withhold the truth from me, gave me a feeling of despair. I didn't feel that I needed to confront Maury. I felt like this was something between my mother and me, and that he had gone along with the plan. In my relationship with my mother, I had felt that she had been manipulative with so many of the things that had led up to this point. Our conversation after the earthquake, disowning me by sending back my portrait, and the insanity of claiming that she had thought that I had been arrested. The beginnings of it were when she had asked me to stop calling her so early in the morning. Couple that with Maury never really being that much of a talker or communicator, just kind of the silent one that was there and maybe on a very rare occasion would teach me a lesson. Because Maury was the silent partner, I just felt that my mother was more or less the decision maker in this situation. Perhaps in a fairly normal, healthy situation, the three people would gather and talk about why the parents had chosen to do this. The communication with my parents deteriorated so long ago when I was such a small child, and it really didn't matter how many times my mother made a chicken soup for me when I was sick, which I totally appreciated in the moment. That's still not a substitute for understanding and wanting the best for one another. The dynamic was they spoke and I listened. After I was married and had my own children, there was still an active obedience because that was my role in their life. Even before I learned of my biological father, my communication had broken down completely with my parents. I reached a threshold and had to say, no more. There was no way that I could respect and be proud of myself and continue a very toxic relationship with them. In my situation, I did not feel that I could trust what anybody said, especially when I got a reply from the letter I wrote to my mother telling me, "So what?" Jared and I were traveling on a mountain road one day, and I chose to read a second letter from my mother while he was driving. Her letter to me took no responsibility for her actions and caused a violent response within me. As soon as I read it, I crumpled up the paper and threw it out the window. Can you imagine the shock if one day somebody said to you that the person who you call your father is not your father? I never, ever dreamed that Maury wasn't my dad. As brutal as the truth may be, it lays the foundation for knowing that the people who are raising you are telling you the truth. No matter how imperfect a parent is, at least you want them to tell you the truth. For me, the worst thing in the world is to lie. And that is evident in the kind of world we are living in. There's just nowhere to go when you're living in a lie and with liars. Then it's even worse when you don't even know that you're living in the lie and you perpetuate it. This makes you feel like a victim, which is always the same scenario of helplessness. In the author Anna Quindlen's words, the great plagiarism scandals in the profession, journalism, have always originated with people who are empty vessels and are therefore comfortable filling the emptiness with invention, which is a fancy way of saying lies. Real reporters are always searching for some version of the truth so that in the long run, they can assemble the truth about the world out of all the stories they have covered and the things they have learned. That is why, in contrast to the common belief that they are the world's greatest cynics, the best journalists are the world's great idealists. They have experienced firsthand the great soothing balance of human existence. For every disgrace, there is a triumph. For every wrong, there is a moment of justice. For every funeral, a wedding. For every obituary, a birth announcement.
I think it's really a good way to end this chapter from using that quote, because it kind of highlights what we've spoken a little bit about, this idea of what's perhaps happening in the world, maybe even more so now than it has been, this idea of what is truth, and particularly in the case of, say, the press, and what is real, what is fabrication, what is fantasy, whatever else. But to then relate that wider level idea, or grappling with what is truth, to this idea of lies in relationships, I think it makes us see that often what we're experiencing in a worldwide level, we're also experiencing in our individual lives as well.
Mm-hmm. We're the micro and we're in the macro. And why in the world, I ask myself, and I ask you, Dr. Adam, and I present to all who's listening, why in the world would you choose to lie when there's a heat in your body that builds up literally, before I knew the truth? If I said something that was an exaggeration, or especially when my parents used to coach me and tell me, to cooperate with interviews of agents and directors, and to get a gig. I'd feel like a heat rise in my body, and my heart would palpitate faster, and there was something in me, like a generator that said, you know, you're not calm. This is, and for goodness sake, you're not going to remember exactly what you say because it's not the truth. And it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. So when I discovered the truth, thank God about my biological father, little by little, as I was healing, and that's what I'm beginning to describe, is that awareness of a temptation of the old pattern started to dissipate. And you know how difficult it is to change a pattern that you've lived with for decades.
Absolutely. That both pattern of being around people where truth is not important or valued, but also just as getting this into for the listeners, this idea of when you say imagine just believing, because that's what you do, unless you know that someone is your father, your mother, whatever else, and then one day that changes. That's an incredible shock, as well as beginning this process of realizing how, starting with that fundamental lie, everything else followed from that.
It's foundational. It's a trust issue, because when you, in your heart of hearts, cannot trust what you are hearing from your loved ones, never mind just anyone. I mean, in fact, it's even easier to be objective if somebody is not telling you the truth, or is twisting things. that you question it, or, or it's just obvious, it's like, oh,
Mm.
I wouldn't trust that person. Well, sure, trust is huge. It starts with yourself. And so that's why I say it's foundational. You know, you you become what do you call that? You become a puppet. That's
Mm.
basically it, for someone to pull your strings and tell you what to say, and you don't think for yourself. And if you dare do think for yourself, I recall my mother always saying, if I mentioned anything to her that seemed like maybe I had an idea, she
Mm.
would always question me and say, "Where did you get that?" Never thinking that I could ever have the ability to, have an idea of my own.
Mm.
And that supported her ability to keep feeding me information that I was supposed to just literally feed back whenever it was to her advantage.
Mm. It's almost like this whole idea of those relationships between parents and children sometimes, where it's I talk, I know, you listen, and almost this idea of undermining, and I guess not even probably doing it consciously, but as part of maintaining this control of, well,
Mm,
you can't know anything, you don't know how to do anything, all that helplessness. I think you mentioned that word helplessness, that
mhm.
if we can put someone into that helplessness, then we maintain the control, if that's what we want. And we may even not know we're doing that, but those little aggressions of belittling someone, or not trusting their idea of what they say, or not believing that they can even sometimes do the simplest of tasks, which we often sometimes see with parents and children. Of course, then that ends up playing out in the person not believing in themselves, and in some ways, I think sometimes those things become true because you're told you can't do something, or you can't believe something, or how did you come up with that, and so you don't feel you have that power to do a range of things.
So then exactly what you're saying is then you abdicate your power, especially
Mm.
in a parent-child relationship or in a spousal relationship where you love that person and you keep forgiving them and you want them to love you,
Mm.
you know. So you want to think, at least I wanted to think, that they were doing it for my highest good, and so, yeah, I became obedient. That pattern began changing, when I finally learned about my biological father.
Mm.
That this man who raised me, who I called dad, but, I thought was my biological father because that was never brought up. I just assumed because there was never any controversy.
Mm.
Um, and so it's like this feeling of low, you're serving someone, you're being of service, which I love being of service, but in a in a way where you definitely, the feeling of empowerment is so deflated that you just constantly question, well, why am I here? What am I doing? And how can I make these people love me? And and then you just keep, abdicating your power. I also think that we should mention, when you're talking about control,
Mm.
and how ego presents itself in that respect.
Mm.
Because what I've been exposed to and what I've learned so far
Mm.
is that, ego is necessary for safety issues and, for certain ways of survival and instinct. But ego, in when it gets to that point of distortion where you get into that realm of control
Mm,
where there's a superiority issue with one person in relationship, and um and then of course there's a denigration of the other person in relationship. And so that power over uh becomes almost a right and wrong. The person that has power over the ego's inflated, and they're right.
mm,
They're always right,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which makes you wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very disempowering. And so, this is a complicated issue, and I'm not an expert in it. I'm just speaking from my heart. And, I'm trying to understand, in my healing process, how to kind of shrink whatever distortion that ego is that I was exposed to, and, make it a healthy ego
Mm,
and function in a way where it seems impossible to change in that regard. It really does. I mean, it's like, my gosh, if you've been living your whole life in a certain way, how do you change? How do you change? um i I just know that I kind of judge by what I feel in my heart. And and when I'm calm and non-reactive, and I can listen, it feels like, I can trust myself. Whatever's coming at me, I can discern a little bit better. Whereas before there was an absolute veil, or many veils
mm,
between me and the truth. And so I guess that's where I'm at, with
mm,
my own little life, and trying to understand the dynamics of what's going on planet Earth, and
mm,
and just really loving the idea, like you and I, have such a wonderful relationship, and I appreciate it so much. And it's because I never have to, think twice about trusting you. And I'm hoping, it feels
mm.
like it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
That, we trust each other. And if we say something, oh, I don't know, carelessly or something like that, it's a process of learning. But then we have the ability
Mm,
to step back and maybe forgive a little, and
mm,
grow
mm.
grow together.
Absolutely. And, just as you're talking about this, I'm kind of reminded of this idea that when we're talking about the types of relationships that people can have or would like to have and don't have, this idea when you get that letter back in this scenario, and
Yeah.
it's kind of that idea of the so what. You get this response of so what, this complete disregard for how you may feel, and that's probably driven by a whole range of factors of fear, your mother's own emotional reaction to this
Mm,
situation.
mm,
But I think that must feel very, what's the word? Almost like just a disregard of how you would feel in this moment. And perhaps, I guess it highlights, and perhaps many people listening to this can relate to this idea of sometimes the relationships that you wish you could have had with people, and you have that realization that that's not the relationship it's going to be.
mhm,
Sometimes these crisis points, I think, can point out, there's a mourning involved, I think, or a grieving involved, and sometimes realizing that
mm.
the relationship you have with that mother or that father or whoever else is not going to be the one that necessarily the one you would want.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, I know in my own experience, it's like I want to provide a measure of safety, for a child.
mm,
And if I'm not capable of being mature enough, then I'm still functioning, as an adolescent,
mm,
or a child in many ways. And I remember when we were talking about this realization that I had, that children having children for centuries.
Mm.
Just because you have an adult body doesn't mean that you have an emotional maturity to be able, to act responsibly for
Mm.
another life.
Mm.
And it can become sequential. It can continue, on and on for generations, and
Mm.
it's very damaging. It's like,
Mm.
grow up already. And with my mom and I just think that the whatever tragedy she felt that she had in her life
Mm.
kind of stunted her growth. And when it came time to show me any empathy, you know she just didn't have the capacity, and nor did I at that
Mm.
time. Nor
Mm.
did I. Both of us basically were stifled in our growth, and in our relationship. So it was very difficult to show each other any empathy. But I would expect, that the rule of thumb is the child would like for the parent to show them a
Mm.
safe place, you
Mm.
know, and maybe that expectation is false, but that's kind of what happened to me. I felt very wounded,
Mm.
and I couldn't understand that she might have felt very wounded as well. I
Mm.
do understand now much more how wounded she must have felt.
Mm. Mm. I think that's so true, isn't it? That when we're in pain, it's hard sometimes to um, be able to factor in that other person's pain as well, and that's, I think, perfectly normal, and it takes time to do so. And I think we probably want to acknowledge, or at least talk about, this idea that some people would say it was a function of the time, that if you got pregnant out of marriage in that time, it was kind of the society driving you to cover these things up, or whatever else. And of course, that's very much the case, that people were pressured into that. But I think even if we can acknowledge that, to carry on a lie all that time, regardless of what drove that, or why people's decision making was, the damage that it did and the effect that it did. So while we can have understanding that some people perhaps felt they had no other choice, that wasn't always the case. There were people, even during those times, who did tell their children at a early age, at what they considered an appropriate age, the nature of their parentage. So it wasn't all everyone doing this, but also, regardless of that, these things have an effect on people.
Well, Adam, you know, speaking from my own experience, but just knowing that when a life is growing in you, whatever complications that life throws, if you love, you know, if you have a love for that life that's growing in you, and I'll go beyond that. If there's a parent, whether it's a gay parent or an adopted, a father expecting a child, whatever, there's an energy to support that life.
Mm.
But not every life is supported, you know.
Mm.
Well, in my case, my feeling about my mom is that she may have had a love for me, but whatever happened to her tragically because of her sense of rejection and abandonment by my biological father created so many obstacles for her to
Mm.
show me love.
Mm.
And I can't go any farther than that, but I really do think that going back to the beginning of time, I mean, you see a wild beast, some lion gives birth to, their cubs, and they're licking their cubs, and their cubs feel so safe. Or an elephant walks in between the parent, the mother's
Mm.
legs. And I mean, there's an acceptance, and then there's probably a lack of acceptance. There's abandonment in nature.
Mm.
And in my case, it was a little more complicated because I guess I just had the will to have this experience, you know. It's
Mm,
like,
mm,
okay, I'm coming anyway, you know. and because I know when she told me that, you know, she fell down on me, you
mm,
know, in her 8th month while she was trying to get on a local train,
mm,
that may have been a subconscious way of eliminating her problem.
mm, mm,
And you know, and then of course, you know, in the beginning stages she was asked by her, you know, my biological father to have an abortion. So, you know, when you're in that kind of a complicated situation and you end up coming out anyway, separating all of that, I, my will wanted to have this experience. My will said, wait a minute, there's a lot to learn. And, you know, another side of the coin is my realization that, oh, you know, we're all a conduit for whomever is coming through us. And then there's no guarantee about having, you know, a loving relationship. So,
mm.
you know, it's a roll of the dice in that way.
Absolutely, and certainly, I think as we're talking about this, and this chapter closes, again, I think we've said this before, but this idea of developing relationships or having relationships in your life that might not be those necessarily those ones that you came in with, but are the relationships you can build over time with that foundation of trust. With people where there isn't that veil anymore that I think we've spoken about probably from the beginning of this podcast, that idea that there often or many times felt there was always some sort of veil between or in these relationships, and being able to move out of that, if not if it means there's an estrangement from the family in this case, as there was, um, that's that. But then to go forward into what's next and what's new.
Well, I have it with you, and I have it with my husband,
Mm,
and I have it with my chosen family,
mm,
and I'm totally open to making amends with anyone from the past who, you know, who would be willing to accept me for who I
mm,
am now.
mm. Yeah, that ability to allow people to, or to be open to seeing people's growth and people's development. I think that's really important, and yeah, it can be very empowering for everyone.
Ah,
Yeah. Wow. Isn't
this
this
is a this is a soul searching episode.
absolutely. And to switch gears just a little bit, because we have our regular fan chat following this, and yeah, this was quite a far ranging conversation. But our conversation with our fan guest today, with Margaret McDaniel, who we called Peggy, as many people with the name Margaret are nicknamed, is quite delightful. I think if you like the balance between, we've gone quite serious here, and but we're going to talk about a range of fun, a whole range of things. So I look forward to us going to our conversation with Peggy now.
Let's go.
Just take me inside your arms, hold tight, and love me with all my faults. Right or wrong or right, I'm begging you, don't make me over. Don't make me over. Now that you got me at your command.
Well, welcome back to Love's a Secret Weapon. And as part of our focus on the fans, we are delighted to welcome another fan to the podcast. Welcome, Peggy. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you both?
We are very happy to have you as our next guest on Love's a Secret Weapon and find out a little bit about you and how you discovered our podcast.
Well, Donna, I've admired your singing talent for years watching beach party movies. And I saw Beach Blanket Bingo a couple years ago, and I thought, who is she? She is marvelous. What a wonderful talent. So I Googled you, and that's how I found your Facebook page and the podcast.
That is so sweet. I love being Googled. Do you, Adam, do you like being Googled?
I have to admit, I do often Google myself, which sounds a little bit narcissistic, but it's not. I just like to see what I'm up to. So
You're just very silly.
Absolutely. And Peggy, so you discovered Donna through the beach party films, but from what I understand, we've had a bit of correspondence in organising this. You're quite the Dr. Pepper fan as well.
Well, I never drank Dr. Pepper as a kid and as a teenager, but I discovered Dr. Pepper through lip smackers, the big lip balms that came out when I was in junior high school. And I had to collect all of them. There was like 30 some. I only collected about half, but I did have the Dr. Pepper one. And I remember the taste of it reminded me of candy lipstick.
Fantastic. And when was that? Was that in the 70s the lip smackers were first around? Or
the late 70s.
Late 70s.
So tell me, you never have chapped lips.
I try not to. I still am a fan of the lip smackers to this day. So
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And did you where did you grow up, and a little bit about your early life? Tell us.
Well, I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's where I still live. I was a swimmer. So the beach party movies were a lot of fun for me because I hung out at different swimming pools throughout my childhood and the teenage years. The beach party movies reminded me a lot of the gang at Lawton Park Pool here in town. It was on the banks of the Spy Run Creek. And I swam there every year from age 14 until I was 18 with the same group of kids. And it was just a great place to spend the summer. We had so much fun.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds great. And did you ever compete professionally, or was it more just for fun and hanging out with friends? And
I swam on different swim teams. I did swim with the Lawton Park swim team all those years. I swam with different Y swim teams during my teenage years as well. And I also taught swimming classes. I got my water safety instructor certification and taught swimming classes for 24 years, actually.
I hope you're still keeping it up.
Well, my mother had a stroke 20 years ago, and I had to give it up to care for her. But I still swim from time to time, and it's a lot of fun for enjoyment. So
Absolutely. Oh, I know. I kind of miss that now that I moved to the desert, because I've always lived near the ocean, and even though swimming was challenging for me, I don't know if you've listened to stories in my childhood, but eventually, I did take to the water, and certainly in Hawaii, I just absolutely adored going into the ocean very carefully. I didn't go too deep because I knew there were other life forces out there that was their territory, so I respected that. But the creek and your friends, have you kept in contact with them?
no, unfortunately, once we all graduated high school and went to college and got real jobs, we just kind of lost touch with each other. And I miss them. Some of them have passed away already, which is just Oh, so terrible to see, but I would
Mm,
love to bump into a few of them and see what their life has been like all these years. We we had so much fun all those years
mm.
that it's a shame that we can't touch base now, but maybe we can.
Well,
Well,
sure.
mm,
Through social media, that's one of the primary things that it makes available to you.
Yes, it's amazing what social media brings up. I'm just floored sometimes. It's really, I mean, it's wonderful. There's good and bad, but I've experienced just wonderful reconnections with people and
Mhm.
memories and things. So,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I before pandemic, and hopefully I can see her again, but I reconnected with an old primary school friend, and we had lunch, and it was really great to see her. I
oh,
hadn't seen her in many years. I hope to see her see her again, but then the pandemic kind of got in the way, so we'll see how we go with that. But Peggy, in terms of your life today, are you married, or do you have children, or?
oh, I've been with the same gentleman for, since 1995. We've been
Mhm.
together. We never had kids. I kind of wish we did, but it just never happened. But his name is David, and we've been just very happy. It's been wonderful.
that's marvelous. And tell me, to conclude, when you stopped swimming and you caretook your mother, so has she passed?
Yes, she did pass in 2009. And
Mhm.
what happened is she had a massive stroke that
Mhm.
Mm,
left her paralyzed from the neck down, except her right hand, or her right arm. She could still move her right arm, feed herself,
mm,
change the remote, and we had to put her into a nursing home.
mm,
And
Mhm.
my sister and I went every day and just kept an eye on her, hung out with her. And then we were able to take her home. We took her shopping, out to eat. We took her everywhere we could, and it was really a wonderful time. The best of
mm,
times brought from the worst of times.
Well, you sound like a really wonderful person. The relationships that you've had and the life that you've had and the life that you're living now and even your desire to reconnect with some people from your past that, are still in your heart.
Oh yes, I've had wonderful friends through the years. I have still friends from first grade.
mm,
So I do cherish my friends and who they are, and each friend brings something different, and it's wonderful
mm.
to learn from each friend and to enjoy them.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like a
And
surrogate family, isn't it?
It is. I don't have a large family, but my friends are part
mm,
of my large family.
Yes, yes, I can relate, dear.
yeah, absolutely. And given that you don't do the swimming so much, anymore, what's filled that? Because we often talk about what we like to do when we're not working, or what is it for you? Do you have a lot of free time, or?
I don't have an awful lot of free time. I have a full time job, and then I have a job that I do part time on call in the
Mm,
evenings. I'm a paralegal.
mm,
But
Hmm.
on my free time, I love to putter around the house and the yard. I have a really nice sized flower garden,
Ooh.
and rose bushes and all
Oh, tell
kinds
me.
of. Oh yeah, that does keep me busy, weeding the garden, planting. I just planted rhubarb this year, so I hope that
Oh,
takes.
well, then you have to find someone who can make you a rhubarb pie.
Oh, I can. I love rhubarb
Oh,
strawberry pie. Ooh.
that is a divisive one, Ruba. People either love it or they hate it.
I
I
know. I
know.
adore it. I adore it. It's my favorite. And so, how many roses do you have?
I have 4 rose bushes,
Uh-huh.
and one I thought was long dead, and I uncovered, this back flower bed that I've kind of ignored the past few years, and I thought I'm going to clean this out, and the rose bush was alive and well, and I
Mhm.
was so thrilled. Um, so I cleared it out the area so it would get plenty of sunshine, and
Mhm.
we'll see.
Well, I must parallel a story. Please indulge me, okay, both of you. I had the occasion. I hope you enjoy this. I had the occasion to spend some time with these two lovely people in Topanga, which is the beginning of Malibu, but it's up in the canyon. And my friends have lived there for many, many years. And I was looking out in her garden, and I saw a very kind of troubled bush. So while I was staying there, I asked her if I could go over and kind of take a closer look, and she said, okay. Anyway, it turned out that it was a rose tree. And
Ooh.
I know. And you know how you can tell because of the leaf, how do you say, the leaf placement? There's either 3, 5, or 7 leaf
Mm,
clusters.
mm.
Yeah.
Both of you, you relate to that?
Yeah, I remember
Yes, I do.
when you clip, you've got to clip at certain clusters and things like
At
that. Yeah.
5. You
Mm.
clip it above 5.
Yes, that's what we do too.
And so and then I weeded and, kind of just turned the earth a little bit and trimmed her and my friend walked out on her deck and she looked at the rose and oh, I forgot that it was even there. She didn't even remember it was a rose because it just became this wiry bush among weeds. And it was so fulfilling just to be able to get in there and dig with just a tiny little spade and I think the three of us have that in common that we all love
Oh,
the
yes.
garden.
I love getting out there and digging in the dirt, digging in the soil, trimming my rose bushes and my peony bushes. And I love bringing
Ah.
flowers. Oh, yeah. I got 4 new peony bushes, and I think it takes several years before you get the flower. And I'm babying them and everything.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
And they smell so beautiful too.
Oh, yes, they really are gorgeous. Well,
And
my gosh, it's so lovely to speak with you and how you came to our lives and what we have in common that we never even knew.
Oh, I know. It's wonderful. Wonderful speaking with you and hearing about, what we have in common. It's wonderful to meet you, not in person, but over the phone, I guess.
It's
and
it's a virtual gathering. It's just become that way. And that's how we get closer. I mean, we've had the telephone for 100 years, more than 100 years. So, that's nothing new, but just meeting you and
I was just going to say, Peggy, that when we were sort of emailing to set this up, you mentioned a few things about yourself, and you related to a story that Donna spoke about in a episode probably a while back, where she started running in her ballet slippers, and you kind of had a cute little story about that. Can you tell us about that one?
I got such a tickle out of that story because I have worn my ballet slippers in public before. And here's the whole story. I was, so I would have been 15. And I had American Girl magazine, the original one, which was the Girl Scout fashion magazine. And there was a beautiful dress in there by Gunny Sack, which I just loved. It was all lace. It had a peplum waist, calico ruffles. It had a velvet bodice and sheer white sleeves. And I thought that looked like a fairy princess dress, and I loved it. And the model in the magazine had a little straw hat and ballet slippers with it. And I thought, well, how unique is that to wear the ballet slippers with the dress and wear it as part of the outfit? And I had slippers already, the Capezio ballet slippers, but I never had the dress. I watched the very first episode of The Facts of Life, and one of the girls had that same dream dress. I'm like, my dream dress, oh, if I could find you. Well, it was Christmas time in 1981. And I was a senior in high school. And I went to Chicago for the very first time to shop all by myself with my money that I made from being a lifeguard. I had like $300 on me
Oh, wow.
to shop for presents and something special for myself.
Mm.
And I went to Lord and Taylor's in the Water Tower, and I shopped in the bargain basement. And there it was on the rack.
Oh, oh my
I
goodness.
I gasped. I said it couldn't be true. And I went, and there it was in my size. And it was marked down considerably because it was from several seasons before. And I hugged it. I
Oh,
was so happy. My dress. And I
Oh my
bought it.
gosh,
And
it sounds like you had your antennas up. Your radar just took you exactly where you needed to go.
it was so funny because I thought, well, I'm going to buy a special dress, because I like to wear dresses a lot back then, especially. And there it was, the special dress. So I waited till spring and I paired it with a little straw hat and my Capezio ballet slippers, and I wore it to school.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and the kids made fun of my ballet slippers.
Oh, well,
I was
it's because you were doing something unique. It's almost like if you do something that's out of the ordinary or different, it causes a reaction.
I expected the hat to get the reaction, to be honest. But I had worn hats before. Newsboy caps were really big then,
Oh yeah.
and I would wear newsboy caps with certain outfits. And so the kids were used to me wearing hats. But the ballet slippers, they're like, you're wearing slippers. And I'm like, oh, but don't they look nice? But anyway, I didn't care. I felt so lovely and happy in that dress with that outfit. I wore it again and again.
Did
Go
someone
ahead.
take a picture of you in that dress?
No pictures.
oh, that's
And
a
My
what
shame.
about those ballet slippers? Do you still have them in a trunk, or do you still wear ballet slippers?
I haven't worn them in a long time, but I still have them. I have the complete
That's
outfit.
okay. I want to see you put together an outfit that you love and with your little ballet slippers. And will you send it to us so we can display how lovely you are?
I will have to find them. They are in the storage locker, unfortunately.
Okay.
They're tucked away safely somewhere, I hate to
Oh,
say.
But tell us,
I
okay.
think
I was just going to say, tell us, Peggy, as well. Do you remember which Facts of Life girl it was that was wearing the dress?
oh, it was one of the girls that was only on the first season or two.
Okay, right.
I can't remember the character now. She was the sporty girl, but yeah, it wasn't one of the ones.
Yeah, I think I kind of remember her. Yeah, but I'm thinking of the ones that were on it for the entire time. But how that's a nice little time capture. I think anyone that's grew up around that time is going to relate to that. That's really fun.
Yeah, that makes me feel so happy to think of that dress. I just wish I could still fit in it. I'd wear it for a special night out with David, but yeah, I no longer can fit in it. Darn.
You mean, but you still have it?
I kept it because it was just so pretty.
Well, then, would your husband be so kind as to take a picture of you holding your dress and your little ballet slippers?
I have
And
to
that would be
find it though.
That would be so lovely to post that photo of you when we play your episode.
I will try and find it. This weekend,
Absolutely. Yeah,
goodness,
see how you go. You'll probably quite enjoy seeing that again.
I would. Oh my, I haven't seen it in years, so I'll look for it and we'll see what we can find.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. I have faith and trust that whatever is in the flow will be, and without much of an effort, it's just the timing will be just right, appropriate for you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And Peggy, as we do on this segment, we often open up to whoever joins us as our special guest to ask some questions. So if you have some questions for Donna, please lead us through.
Oh, I do. I have several questions. Donna, did Dr. Pepper have a say about what TV shows you appeared on, such as The Monkees or Gomer Pyle?
Well, they did have a say in regard to doing other commercials.
Okay.
So in advertising other products, and the only one that they decided to say, okay, was a Simplicity pattern commercial where I literally had to sign a contract that I would make the garment that I was wearing in the commercial. And because that was the condition for an actress or a performer to be in that position. So that was the only situation that I remember any restrictions. I think that they enjoyed knowing that I was giving them more exposure. So their whole idea was to grow their product. And I think I was helping them do that.
Hi, I'm Donna Loren. See this dress? I made it. Scout's honor. It's a Simplicity Jiffy pattern. Great for school. Sewing's my hobby. It's fun. You're all thumbs? I was too. But Jiffies are the easiest patterns around. This dress I'm wearing has only 3 main pattern pieces. Try it. Before you know it, you'll go on to this Jiffy. This Jiffy. This Jiffy. And this Jiffy. They're all in the Simplicity catalog at the pattern counter. Besides Jiffy's, it has hundreds of other patterns. Something for everyone. Come on, give it a go-go. If I can sew, you can sew.
I would say you did help. I remember you on the Monkees. I've watched the Monkees since I was 3, and I remember your episode.
That's something that keeps it. Just a lot of people that join us talk about the Monkees, or Batman, of course, and those shows are going to be around 100 years from now. So
Goodness. And Gomer Pyle. We loved Jim Neighbors in my family. So
yes, he was a very gracious human being.
What's everybody so excited about?
When I saw you weren't in the bed, I thought heaven knows what.
Oh, Mama, that's silly. I just couldn't sleep, so I came down here. And Gomer's here because he couldn't sleep either. So we decided we'd have a little milk and cookies and talk. Isn't that right, Gomer?
Yes, ma'am. You both couldn't sleep?
Oh, we've been having such a nice conversation, we completely forgot about the time. Turns out we have a lot in common. Well, if you'll excuse me, I think I can sleep now. Good night, Gomer. I certainly enjoyed our talk.
Me too.
Good night, Mama. Papa? Leo?
Going to bed, too.
Well, I guess I could get some sleep now myself. Good night.
Night.
The both of you sing like angels, really.
Darling, thank you.
Both fabulous singers, and you're a wonderful seamstress, because I got your book, Pop 60s, and I got my library to order a copy. And I'd admire the clothes that you made, and you would note, I made this outfit and that outfit. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what a talented seamstress you are.
I still enjoy, now I only sew by hand. But for instance, I just invited some friends over for a dinner party, but part of when I do a dinner party is to make a garment. So I had an idea to make a lace hostess gown, which I finished just in time.
Wow.
Oh my stars.
How long did that take? I was going to say how much
About
time do you
5
need
days.
Wow, that's very
It's all by
impressive.
hand.
I could see how it is. How neat. Oh, you'll have to post a picture of your dress.
Oh,
I'd love to see it.
all right. Okay. Well,
Yeah, we should.
we'll
Absolutely.
do that as a fair exchange. Of course, I want to see yours and you can see mine.
Okay, sounds good.
And were those, Donna, just for the listeners who might have forgotten, most of those dresses were based on a Simplicity pattern, or was there a mix of the ones from the 60s, I mean?
Oh gosh, no. No, I usually would draw out an idea for a dress, and they were pretty similar, the empire neckline, and if it was a mini length or a full length or something like that, or a long sleeve, or I think with one exception, but usually I drew out the design and started that way. And for simplicity, I went by, obviously, the pattern that they provided, which was, I always thought they were very kind of Jackie O-ish, A-line with a little high neckline, very proper, like she always appeared.
Mm, mm.
Wow. I've never sewn from scratch. I've always used mostly simplicity patterns. That's a talent. My
Well,
mother had that talent.
oh, you did. Oh, she did. Yeah. Well, I think it comes with a vision. That's like anything. If you have a vision for a garden, or sometimes a vision for an idea, a vision for a song, and then it just manifests, and you just get it totally focused into it, and suddenly there it is. It becomes a reality.
I actually
Yes.
don't know. As simplicity, I know they're still around. I wonder how many people still use them. It'd be interesting to
Oh, I'm
hear.
sure many people are still making their own garments, that if they have time. I mean, obviously, it does take a little time to do that, but it's so much more economical. And then you have a one of a kind. Even if you're using a pattern, you choose the fabric, and you might alter it a little here and a little there, so you don't see yourself coming and going.
Absolutely.
I meet young women that sew. You can find sewing machines at Walmart, which I think is just so amazing. And I also meet young women that needlepoint now and do macrame and garden. So the younger group of women in their 20s and 30s, they're into all of that if they have time.
Yeah, I know that too, is that there's a sense of being closer to the earth, that awareness, and to have more reverence for the earth and what grows from the earth, and nurturing it, and then creating something, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. And of course, I know many people use the fast method of using a sewing machine. I don't know. I just prefer sewing by hand.
I do have to tell a quick story that I was just so upset by it that my grandmother used to have one of those, the black sewing machines. It was probably a Singer.
Oh, the Singer sewing machines, yes.
She had one of them, and because she made so many garments and so many, all sorts of things, and we've still got a lot of it in the chest that, when they first came over from Italy to Australia in the early 60s, they had the big chest that you put everything in, and we've still got a lot of that. But my grandfather was very much about functionality, and I think he probably looked at that sewing machine one day and just thought, it's not really a functional thing. I can't do anything with it, and he threw it out. He threw away this beautiful Singer black sewing machine, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, wow. But
well, your grandfather, I hear from you, loves the garden, so he prioritized a different, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I have no idea. I think you should have a little heart-to-heart with him.
He probably thought, yes, I can't use it in the garden. It's not going to help me grow anything out it. So, but I think he's learned since then to know that anytime he's got like an old vase, an old something that he doesn't want, he always asks me if I want it, and I always take them. So yeah, but
that's lovely.
And what other questions did you have, Peggy? Because I know you had a few, so please go ahead.
I used to go swimming in Van Wert, Ohio. They had a really neat pool, and I have arthritis, and it was always warm. It's since now closed. But as I drove to Van Wert and entered their downtown, they had this huge Dr. Pepper sign, and it was obviously from, I think, the 60s, because it had the 2, the 4, and the 10 on it, and it was so cool. And I wanted to know, did you ever unveil these signs or go places and dedicate the sign or anything like that?
Well, only the ones that I was on.
We don't see as many of them in pictures because I guess they were billboards, they weren't photographed as much, but there were at least quite a few of those, weren't there, Donna? The actual billboard, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back into my photo archive book of the Pup 60s to see what page there might be a photograph of a billboard. That I believe that there There must be.
Mm.
There are, now that you mention it, I remember a photograph or two of you with your billboard or
Okay.
posing for the billboard. Oh my
That's right.
goodness.
Mhm. That's
The-
right. That's right.
Yeah, I remember there was definitely one with I think it was probably a yellow swimsuit.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I had to pose for so many hours on one side of my body, and the sun. I was completely fried on one
Oh
side of.
no.
I looked like strawberry and vanilla, you know.
Oh my goodness.
And were they all filmed? Were the photography for, say, that billboard, was it done in Chicago along with everything else, or?
That particular one you're mentioning
Yeah.
was done somewhere in Texas. I don't recall. It was like a sandbar. I'm not sure exactly what body of water. It might be the Yucatan or somewhere near Texas where the water was very shallow and you could walk very far out. So the photographer could be on the shore and I could be 100 or more feet away from him and still be in the shallow water.
Mm.
That's how.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
What was it like seeing yourself on a billboard? And did you ever not know a billboard was on your way and then you see yourself
Oh,
very large?
good. Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I think you step back and you don't really see it's you. It's another image because that's not totally who you are. But I was driving in Los Angeles with someone, and I was near the LA County Museum on Wilshire Boulevard, and all of a sudden, there I am.
Surprise!
How many people can say that though? I was just trying
Oh, I
to
know.
saw myself on a billboard. It must be a pretty. I've spoken to a few actors who watched even old shows that they did, when they were younger, and they say it's them, but it's not them. That's how they feel. It's kind of this odd kind of disconnect that they know it's them, but it's almost like it's not. And so they see this young kid performing, and they're kind of proud of them or happy for them, but it's almost like that's not quite me. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it.
Yeah, so many when you hear so many actors say that once they're done, they never look back. They don't watch the dailies. They don't watch they just don't watch themselves. They're more interested in moving on and developing a new character or improving whatever they've done because they don't want to criticize themselves because of course they're going to be perfectionists in terms of I should have done it this way or I should have done so. Hey, best to let it be and move on, move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Even when I think about when I was a teenager hanging out at Lawton Pool, that's been so long ago now that seems like that's another person or me once removed. It's just kind of a strange feeling to think back at those days and how much fun I had. But then again, it's like, but I was that person so long ago. I hate to say that, but
well, but in terms of a perspective, you just evolve, as you live your life and have experiences. You're not the same. Of course, you're the same person in essence and in your heart, but life teaches you so many things along the way. And sure, looking back, it can be a very unusual experience. That was me.
And it is, isn't it? And I wonder with both of you that when you do look back, like you can see yourself quite differently, but I think your values are often still the same. Like your underlying sort of values and what's important to you remains.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Adam.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm the same person, only with more layers. Yeah. But inside the heart and my values and who I am, the basic person I am is still the same.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Peggy, it's been really, really a pleasure sharing this time with you and Dr. Adam, and knowing that we're linked, no matter how far away we are, Adam in Australia, you in the Midwest and me in the Southwest of this country. Distance is irrelevant, and it's just
It
so
is.
lovely to share our lives together.
It's been a pleasure sharing this time with the both of you. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed speaking with you and getting to know you. It's been wonderful. And thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for being on Love's a Secret Weapon.
Thanks so much, Peggy. That was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, honey, you take good care, and I hope that you can enjoy your life, continue to enjoy your life, and put out all those good vibes, and just be a loving being, and know that we're so happy that you joined us.
Hi, that's me, Donna Loren. After an exhausting recording session, I always relax, refresh, and enjoy Dr. Pepper. Some people relax with golf. Let's watch. Both won that time. And so does everyone who takes time to relax, refresh, and enjoy the fun-filled flavor and light-hearted lift of Dr. Pepper or Diet Dr. Pepper. Not a cola or a root beer, Dr. Pepper and Diet Dr. Pepper are distinctively different for today's light and lively taste. Or as I sing it,
Relax, refresh, enjoy it. Now it's Dr. Pepper time. Yes, love.